Let me ask you something honest. How much money have you spent on fertilizer in the last few years? Because I sat down one winter and actually added it up. The Miracle-Gro, the tomato food, the bloom booster, the root starter, and I nearly fell out of my chair, hundreds of dollars every single season. And you know what I had to show for it half the time? Tomatoes that split before they ripened. Peppers that sat there doing absolutely nothing for 6 weeks. Squash plants that looked okay but never really thrived. Flowers that bloomed for 2 weeks and then just gave up. I kept thinking I was doing something wrong. Maybe my soil was bad. Maybe I was watering wrong. Maybe I just didn't have the right combination of products. So I kept buying more. Different brands, different formulas, slow release, water soluble, organic certified. I tried it all. And I kept getting the same mediocre results season after season. Then something shifted. I started talking to older gardeners in my area, people who had been growing food on this land for 30, 40 years. People who didn't have a garden center loyalty card and didn't care what was on sale at the hardware store. And what they told me stopped me cold, because almost none of them were buying fertilizer. Not the liquid kind, not the granular kind, barely any of it. They were making their own, from stuff they already had, from things most of us throw away without a second thought. And their gardens? Unreal. I'm talking tomato plants so loaded with fruit the cages couldn't hold them. Corn that came up thick and dark green. Herbs that were so lush and fragrant you could smell them from the driveway. I paid attention. I started asking questions. I started experimenting. And over the following seasons, I tested every homemade liquid fertilizer I could get my hands on. And 5 of them completely changed the way I grow. These aren't trendy internet hacks. These aren't things some influencer made up last month. These are time-tested, soil science-backed, real-world solutions. They have been feeding gardens long before Miracle-Gro put its first blue crystal in a yellow box. And today, I'm going to walk you through all 5 of them. What they are, how to make them, why they work, and which plants and situations they're best for. I'm saving the absolute best one for last. The one that, honestly, if I could only pick one fertilizer for the rest of my gardening life, this would be it. So stay with me all the way through, because that last one is worth its weight in gold, and it literally costs you nothing. Before we dive in, drop a comment right now and tell me what state you're gardening in this season. I'm always blown away by the diversity in this community. People growing in the humid heat of Georgia, the dry, high desert of New Mexico, the short, cool summers of Minnesota. Knowing where you are helps me make better content for you, and honestly, I just love hearing what's growing out there. Tell me your state and what you're most excited to grow this year. All right, let's get into it. Number 5, grass clipping tea. Now I know what you're thinking. Grass clippings? That's it? But hear me out, because this one surprises people every time. When most gardeners mow their lawn, they either bag the clippings and throw them away, or they leave them on the grass to break down. And both of those are fine. But there's a third option that almost nobody talks about. And it unlocks something genuinely powerful for your garden. Fresh grass clippings are extraordinarily high in nitrogen. We're talking one of the highest nitrogen concentrations you'll find in any organic material. And nitrogen is the nutrient responsible for that explosive green vegetative growth. The big leafy canopy on your tomato plants, the thick stalks on your corn, the lush spread of your squash leaves that shades out weeds and holds moisture in the soil. Here's how you make the tea. After you mow, and this works best if your lawn hasn't been treated with herbicides or synthetic pesticides. So keep that in mind. Fill a 5-gallon bucket about 1/3 of the way up with fresh green clippings. Then fill the rest of the bucket with water. Non-chlorinated water is best. So if you're on city water, let it sit overnight before using it, or collect rainwater if you can. Stir it well, cover it loosely so it can breathe, and let it sit for 3 to 4 days. What happens over those days is a mild fermentation and leaching process. The nitrogen and other nutrients in the clippings begin releasing into the water. By day 3 or 4, you'll have a greenish-brown liquid that smells a little earthy, maybe slightly funky. That's normal, that's the good stuff. Before you use it, strain out the clippings. You can compost those. And dilute the liquid at roughly a 1-to-10 ratio. 1 part tea, 10 parts water. Then water it in around the base of your plants. This is particularly effective in the early to mid-growing season. When you want your plants putting on size and structure before they shift into flowering and fruiting. Leafy greens absolutely love this. Lettuce, kale, chard, spinach will respond visibly within days. Corn is another big one. Heavy nitrogen feeder and grass clipping tea delivers it in a bioavailable, gentle form. That won't burn your roots the way synthetic liquid fertilizers can if you apply too much. The mistake most people make with this one is applying it too late in the season or too heavily to fruiting plants. Once your tomatoes, peppers, and squash are flowering and setting fruit, you want to back off the nitrogen and shift to phosphorus and potassium. Too much nitrogen at that stage and you get gorgeous, enormous plants. With almost no fruit, I've made that mistake. Don't do it. Use grass clipping tea in spring and early summer on your leafy crops and young transplants, and it will give you a growth surge that'll impress you every time. Number 4, wood ash water. This one has a long history. We're talking centuries of agricultural use, and it's one of the most underutilized resources most people have sitting in their backyard, especially if you have a fire pit, a wood stove, or a fireplace. Wood ash is rich in potassium and calcium, and it also raises soil pH, meaning it makes soil more alkaline. That's a crucial detail, and I'll get to why in a moment, but first, how to make it. Take about a quarter cup of dry, cooled hardwood ash. And I want to emphasize hardwood here, because softwood ash from pine or cedar doesn't have the same nutrient profile and can introduce compounds you don't want in your garden. Hardwood ash from oak, hickory, maple, fruit trees, that's what you want. Mix that quarter cup into a gallon of water, stir it well, and let it settle for about 24 hours. Then carefully pour off the liquid from the top, avoiding the gritty sediment at the bottom, and use that liquid to water in around your plants. You can also apply it as a foliar spray, but dilute it more heavily if you do, maybe half strength, and spray it in the early morning or evening so it doesn't burn leaves in the heat of the day. What wood ash water does particularly well is support root development and fruit formation. Potassium is directly involved in both of those processes. It helps plants regulate water uptake, strengthens cell walls, improves disease resistance, and drives the production of starches and sugars, which is why potassium is so important late in the growing season, when fruit is sizing up and sweetening. If you're growing tomatoes, potatoes, carrots, beets, garlic, or fruit trees, wood ash water is something you should be using. These are all heavy potassium feeders that will reward you with better yields, better flavor, and improved storage quality when their potassium needs are met. Now here's the important caution I mentioned. Because wood ash raises pH, you do not want to use this on acid-loving plants, like blueberries, azaleas, rhododendrons, potatoes in some cases, or strawberries. It will stress them out, and you may start seeing nutrient deficiencies because the pH shift locks certain minerals out of their reach. Test your soil pH first if you're unsure. In most vegetable garden soils, especially if you've been adding a lot of organic matter, a little alkalinity boost is actually beneficial. But know your plants and know your soil before you reach for the ash. Used in the right context, on the right plants, wood ash water is a remarkable zero-cost fertilizer that costs you nothing and delivers real results. Number 3, Epsom salt solution. Okay, I know Epsom salt is not exactly a secret anymore. You've probably seen it mentioned in gardening circles plenty of times. But I'm including it here because the way most people use it is wrong, and used correctly, this stuff is legitimately transformative for certain plants and certain deficiency problems. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate, that's all it is. And what it provides your garden is magnesium and sulfur, two secondary nutrients that most commercial fertilizers don't supply in meaningful quantities, because they're less commonly deficient than nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But when they are deficient, you'll know it, because the symptoms are pretty distinctive, and they can seriously tank your garden's productivity. Magnesium deficiency shows up as yellowing between the leaf veins. The veins stay green while the tissue between them turns yellow. It's called intervenal chlorosis, and it's extremely common in tomatoes, peppers, and roses, especially in sandy soils, or soils that have been heavily farmed and had their magnesium depleted over time. Sulfur deficiency looks similar but affects younger leaves first rather than older ones. Here's the recipe: 2 tablespoons of Epsom salt dissolved in 1 gallon of warm water. Apply it as a soil drench around the base of the plant once every 2 to 4 weeks during the growing season. You can also use it as a foliar spray, 1 tablespoon per gallon, sprayed directly on the leaves. The foliar application is actually faster acting because the plant absorbs nutrients directly through the leaf surface rather than having to pull them up through the root system. Where I've seen the most dramatic results with Epsom salt is on tomatoes and peppers. These plants are notoriously heavy magnesium feeders, and in a long growing season, especially in containers or raised beds with limited soil volume, they will exhaust the available magnesium and start showing those deficiency symptoms right when they're trying hardest to produce fruit. A good Epsom salt treatment mid-season can completely reverse that yellowing and get your plants back on track within a week or 2. Roses also respond beautifully. Bigger blooms, deeper color, more vigorous cane growth. And if you're growing herbs, particularly basil, which is another heavy magnesium feeder, you'll notice a real difference in leaf size and color after a couple of Epsom salt applications. The caution here, don't over-apply. More is not better with Epsom salt. If your soil already has adequate magnesium, which you'd know from a soil test, adding more won't help and can actually interfere with calcium uptake. This is a targeted remedy for a specific problem, not a general all-purpose fertilizer. Use it when you see those yellowing symptoms or as a mid-season insurance application on known heavy feeders. Don't use it as your only fertilizer or apply it every week thinking you're doing something good. Now I want to stop right here for a moment because we're about to get into the top 2. And these are the ones that consistently get the most dramatic results in real gardens in real conditions across every climate zone in the country. I've had people reach out to me after trying these and tell me they couldn't believe the difference. So, if you've been watching this far, do yourself a favor and don't skip ahead. Because the way you combine and time these last 2 matters a lot, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. Number 2, banana peel fertilizer water. Here's something I want you to think about. Every time you eat a banana and throw away the peel, you are literally throwing away potassium, phosphorus, calcium, and magnesium. You're tossing a small packet of plant nutrition into the trash, and over a whole season, that adds up to a meaningful amount of free fertilizer that most gardeners never use. Banana peel fertilizer is one of my all-time favorites for a specific reason. It's perfectly timed for the flowering and fruiting stage of plant development. Phosphorus drives flower initiation and root growth. Potassium drives fruit development, cell strength, and disease resistance. Both of those are present in significant quantities in banana peels, and they're both the nutrients your plants need most right when they're transitioning from vegetative growth into production. There are 2 main methods for making this, and they produce slightly different results, so I'll walk you through both. The quick method: take 2 to 3 banana peels. Fresh is fine, but peels that have browned a bit are actually better. This is because the cell walls have started breaking down and nutrients leach out more readily. Put them in a quart jar or a large glass, cover them with water. Let them soak for 24 to 48 hours at room temperature. Then strain and use that liquid directly on your plants. No dilution necessary for a 2 to 3 peel steep in a quart of water. You can use it every 1 to 2 weeks. The fermented method, this one takes longer but produces a more concentrated product. Fill a jar with banana peels. You can accumulate these in the freezer if you don't have enough at once. Cover with water, add a teaspoon of unsulfured molasses, cover loosely, and let it ferment at room temperature for 5 to 7 days. You'll see some bubbling, which is normal and good. That's fermentation happening. Strain it, and then dilute it 1 part to 5 parts water before applying. Where I use banana peel water specifically, on my tomatoes about 2 weeks before they start flowering. This version also introduces beneficial microorganisms to your soil, which adds another layer of benefit beyond just the raw nutrient content. This acts as a transition fertilizer to prepare them for fruiting. On my squash and cucumber plants right when I start seeing the first male flowers appear. On my pepper plants, which are notoriously slow to fruit in many climates and really benefit from that phosphorus push at the right moment. And on my annual flowers, zinnias, marigolds, cosmos, when I want to extend and intensify the bloom period. One thing that surprises people, banana peel fertilizer is also excellent for indoor plants and container gardens. This is where nutrients deplete much faster than in the ground. Pothos, peace lilies, monsteras, all of them will show you new growth within a week or 2. Don't use the straight soak water on seedlings or very young transplants. It's too much too soon and can stress tender roots. Wait until plants are established and actively growing before introducing it. And one more thing, the browner the better. Don't wait for them to be perfect. The more they've broken down, the more readily the nutrients come out in the soak. Keep a bag in your freezer, build up a collection, and you'll have fertilizer material year-round, no matter where you are in the country. Number 1, compost tea. I told you I was saving the best for last, and I meant it. If there is one thing I would tell every gardener in America to start doing this season, it would be brewing and using compost tea. Nothing else I've ever used, bought, or made comes close to what this does for a garden when it's done right. Let me explain what compost tea actually is. There are 2 versions: passive compost tea, which is just compost soaked in water for a day or 2, and actively aerated compost tea, which involves adding an air pump to the mix to supercharge microbial activity. Both have value. But actively aerated compost tea, what people often call AACT, is the one I'm going to focus on, because the results are on a different level. Here's the thing that makes compost tea unique. It's not just about nutrients. Commercial fertilizers deliver a specific ratio of nutrients in a soluble form. That's useful. But what they do not deliver is biology, living biology. Beneficial bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, the microscopic army of organisms that make soil work. Healthy soil is not just dirt with nutrients dissolved in it. Healthy soil is an ecosystem. And when that ecosystem is functioning properly, plants thrive. Plants can access nutrients they couldn't before, develop stronger immune responses, and their roots grow deeper and more efficiently. They produce more fruit, more yield, more flavor. Compost tea delivers that biology directly to your soil and to your plant's root zones. Here's how I make it. Start with good compost. This is the most important variable. Finished, dark, earthy-smelling compost from your own pile. Put about a cup of that compost into a mesh bag or an old pillowcase tied shut. You're making essentially a giant tea bag. Drop it into a 5-gallon bucket. Then add your food sources for the microorganisms. The air pump keeps the water oxygenated, allowing aerobic bacteria and fungi to thrive and multiply. I add a tablespoon of unsulfured blackstrap molasses to feed bacteria. I also add a teaspoon of fish hydrolysate, which feeds both bacteria and fungi. Some people also add kelp meal, which adds trace minerals and plant growth hormones called cytokinins that have remarkable effects on root development. Run the air pump for 18 to 24 hours. What you end up with should be slightly foamy on top. That foam is a sign of high microbial activity. It should smell good, earthy, mushroomy, rich, not sewage, not rot. If it smells bad, something went wrong and you should start over. Use it immediately once it's done brewing. The microorganisms are alive and active, and they begin to die off as the aeration stops and oxygen levels drop. Apply it within 4 hours. If you're using it as a foliar spray, strain it very well. Apply it in the morning or evening, never in the heat of the day. The effects of regular compost tea applications are cumulative and long-lasting. Every time you apply it, you're adding more life to your soil. You're building a soil ecosystem that feeds your plants more effectively, retains water better, and resists compaction every single year. I have patches I've treated for years, and the difference is remarkable. It's darker, looser, and the plants are more resilient to heat and drought. Now, do I need all that equipment? For the basic passive version, just compost soaked in water for 24 hours? No, you don't. That will still add life. But if you want the full effect, the air pump setup costs about $15, and it pays for itself in the first season easily. It's a great investment. You start seeing your grass clippings and your banana peels as resources instead of waste. That shift in perspective is what separates a struggling gardener from a successful one. Epsom salt solution for magnesium, banana peel water for transitioning to fruit, and compost tea, the crown jewel for thriving soil. These pull you into a different relationship with your garden. You stop being a consumer who buys inputs, and you start being a grower who understands the system. You start seeing your grass clippings and your banana peels as resources instead of waste. That shift in perspective is what separates a struggling gardener from a successful one. Your garden is more than a hobby. It's about food security, self-sufficiency, and connection to the land. It deserves more than a synthetic blue powder. Give these a try this season. Start with just one. I'd say the banana peel water or the compost tea, because those two will show you results fast. Experiment, observe, and pay attention to what your plants are responding to. Every garden is different. Now I want to hear from you. Have you tried these before? Leave it in the comments. Share this video with a fellow gardener, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time. I've got more videos coming on soil building and seed saving. Until next time, get your hands in the dirt and keep growing.